Welcome to the Energetically You podcast, where we will be talking about healthy habits, abundant mindset, and optimal wellness. I'm your host, Megan Swan, creator of the Sustainable Integrated Wellness Approach. At 30, I sold everything and went on my own eat, pray, love journey, if you will. And now, at 41, I'm still on my first stop here in Mexico, loving life and feeling more energy than ever before. This podcast is for ambitious women who are looking to level up their energy so that they feel happier and more productive throughout their day in all of their projects and passions. Inside, we are going to be talking about ways to truly tune in to our minds and bodies in new ways to leverage our natural energy sources. So let's dive in. Welcome back to Energetically You. I'm here today with Karolina. She is a certified alcohol-free life coach, and I'm so excited for you to get to know her a little better and hear all about her journey. Karolina, can you help me with your last name? Because as my listeners know, I'm not the best with names.
My last name is Polish and 12 letters long. It's Rzadkowolska. I appreciate you asking.
Amazing. So please tell us about your journey to becoming an alcohol-free life coach, which honestly, I hadn't even heard that phrase before, but it's brilliant. And I can't wait to hear about your journey getting there.
Yeah. So thank you so much for asking. I found myself so stuck in a relationship with alcohol that had become outdated, that was based on an unconscious habit that my 17-year-old version of myself really initiated. And I found myself doing the same thing every single weekend. And what I was doing, I thought was very normal. It's what everyone around me was doing. I was also stuck in a day job that wasn't fulfilling me. And I found myself very purposeless. While I've done a lot of introspection now to really think back about what was going on then, I recognize how unfulfilled I was feeling. I was literally couldn't wait for the weekend to drink because I wasn't fulfilled and was literally waiting for life to go by faster, right? I wasn't happy with what I was doing in my work. And I just felt like I was living in this loop. I tried to be a very healthy and mindful person. And so because I tried not to drink during the week, I literally found myself going on this upward crescendo, feeling good and productive and mindful and meditating. And then every single weekend it came crashing back down. And I started at not even square zero, minus 3 squares, back. And I lived my life in this cycle for years, literally thinking that that was what balance looked like, right? Like we're all supposed to have it all. We're supposed to wake up early and work out and meditate and go to the great job and then go out to happy hour with our friends. And yet one thing doesn't fit with the others, right? And I didn't really give myself permission to explore another way because I had only heard of the story that the only type of people who stop drinking, well, they're hiding vodka in their desk at work and they're at rock bottom and, they're getting DUIs. And so for so long, I tried to make my relationship with alcohol work. Like a shoe I just couldn't fit into without even asking myself, do I really care about this shoe? Is that what really gives me purpose and meaning in life? And it was really from hearing about, dry January and this idea to take a break that I finally, my mindset started to change and say, wait, I can just try this. I can just experiment with this. And I did. And taking a break from alcohol literally revolutionized my life. I found myself falling in love with peaceful early mornings. I found myself really reflecting more and journaling more about my experiences. I found my moods and happiness really rebalancing. And I started really asking myself, I'm a really big introvert. I was really shy growing up. I started asking myself, why don't I feel comfortable in my skin to socialize without a drink? Why am I outsourcing that part of myself instead of finding it within? And so, when I took that break from alcohol, I actually started drinking a few times after that. And I just hated it. There was just such a huge contrast to this mindful, healthy, reflective, growth-oriented person I started to become. And so my intuition just told me loud and clear, Karolina, take another break. And from then on, I really just haven't looked back. I really, really started, like I said, hearing a deeper voice from my intuition. That's the voice that told me to take a break in the first place. But she also told me to start sharing my story. And she told me that there is a method to change your relationship with alcohol that isn't drowned in the old paradigms that we've heard of, and that there's a new way, a third way to really find happiness and purpose as someone who just doesn't desire alcohol because they've got so much bigger, better things to do in their life. And I started getting passionate about personal growth. And, removing alcohol from my life was an exploration and really debunking a lot of limiting beliefs. And we can go over some of those. But as I debunked the ones around alcohol, I started to spill over into other areas of my life. For example, I never in a million years thought I could be an entrepreneur. To me, that was some kind of tech genius from San Francisco who had a startup. It just never even dawned on me that it was possible for me. And yet when I took my break from alcohol and I started working on that Achilles heel and I started doing it and getting confident, like 20 days, 30 days, 50 days without drinking, I started to ask myself, what else can I do? What other stories have I been telling myself? So I launched my business. I got certified as an alcohol-free life coach. I started a podcast. I wrote a book. I did all these things I never believed possible because ultimately I wanted to share my message with the past version of me who was scared and stuck and playing small and just trying to fit in and really didn't value her intrinsic worth. Everything I do is for her. And, the people I've been able to touch and help since then have just made my life so meaningful. And I can't believe I get to be awake and alive to it in this second chance.
Amazing. Well, I feel like we have a lot in common. And basically everything you just said really, really resonates with me. I think, obviously, I came to the realization, I think, later in my life. Do you mind me asking, how old are you?
33. And so I went alcohol free at 30.
Yeah. Okay. So this week I'm celebrating 3 years as well, sober. And I think, more women need to hear this. I actually just finished, tomorrow I'll be publishing a podcast where I did with two girlfriends that are not sober, but one did dry January, the other dry February, and just on the reflections. And I feel like maybe it's a little bit because you and I are in the sober bubble, if you will, that it seems like it's growing quite rapidly, or that it's somewhat of a movement. And back when I was, looking for inspiration, I felt like in the UK, there was a lot more women. There's a great book by Canadian author, and Dowsett. I'm forgetting, there's a middle name there, but it's called, just called Drink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read that one.
I'm curious, can you break down, because the listeners already heard my story, but can you break down what was your, I personally did a year of what I considered mindful drinking to see if do I really need to give it up 100%? What was your process and the timeline?
Yeah, it's so funny when I look back. I actually did a recent video where I really looked back at my timeline, because there's even studies that show that once we become aware that we're not happy with our relationship with alcohol, it takes years to make any changes, because it's oftentimes a very subconscious nudge, right? And we're not listening to it, or we tried different experiments or different equations. We play with the rules, And so I look back and I had been thinking about this for a long time. I remember I had one of those Excel sheets where I'd literally list how many drinks I had. And so I was counting them every week, and I wanted to be under the weekly limit, and that was almost impossible. I think it was 7, And I was just always so focused on it. I always wanted to drink less. I had so many rules around it, no more than 2 drinks, don't drink this type of drink, have this much water in between them. I remember when I was younger in college, I drank really heavily, and I drank more than I ever have in my life, right? So that's when I was drinking the most, but I was so carefree about it. I didn't care. It was college. I was just doing whatever. And it was this moderation illusion that really drove me insane. Like I was maniacal about it, right? And I was constantly letting myself down. My rules were always getting broken. My self-esteem was getting drained, and even trusting myself just didn't seem possible because I was always breaking my intentions around it. And so, I was always just this mantra: drink less, drink less, drink less. And I started reading some books about it. And I remember, like you said, there's been an explosion in this movement recently, but not even just 5 years ago, there was barely any books. A lot of them were very, I would say, in the old school paradigm of the rock bottom, the labels, all that stuff. And while I found some relief in those kind of books to actually like talk about this issue, I also was like, well, that's not me, right? Like, that's not my story. I'm not that far gone. And so there was almost like a distancing that I did to that, And really to be able to like, I just kept hearing that voice though. Every Monday morning, it was like, Karolina, you're made for more. You're made for more. I woke up every Monday morning so depressed, so let down with myself, ashamed. It didn't even matter what happened that weekend. Probably nothing. Probably was a benign, just some wine with Netflix. But I always just felt so low. And, scientifically, alcohol actually changes the neurochemistry of our brain. So it releases more of what's called dynorphin, which is actually a neurotransmitter that makes us feel sad and low. It heightens our levels of anxiety and cortisol and stress hormones. So it's not just in our heads, right? Like this is actually physically happening in our brains, but I had no idea, right? I thought it was just me and something was wrong with me. And so I remember with this mantra to just try drink less, I would do even, I think a whole year before I took my first real break, I did this experiment where I told myself every month you have to take 7 days off. And for me, weekends were my weakness. So I could go the week without drinking, but how could I not drink on a Friday night? That was impossible for me. So it was a whole year of actually challenging myself to take a whole weekend and week off. And it was interesting because in one way, like that's miserable. The worst parts of being alcohol free are usually the first week. And so like I never allowed myself to give myself the benefits, the incredible like energy and just rejuvenation that you feel a few weeks, and days later. At the same time, though, I really started kind of conditioning that muscle to start feeling comfortable in just my skin and being okay with being out with other people and not drinking. And when I took that practice that I had, formed over that year and then really combined it with a solid commitment to take a break from alcohol and work on my mindset, because behavior change is great, but it can leave a vacuum of deprivation. It's really all in the mindset. So when we look at the reasons why we like to drink, that's where we can get fundamentally clear. Are those reasons even true? Are they true for everyone? Do they serve me? Do they empower me? A lot of reasons why I like to drink harnessed on this idea that alcohol made me more sociable or outgoing. And when I think of a different way of saying that statement, I need alcohol to have fun, or I'm not fun without alcohol, or I'm not sociable or outgoing without alcohol. Ooh, what a depressing thought. What a disempowering thought that really took away my own agency and ability to really cultivate that skill and trait within myself. Every time I reached for a drink at a party, I subconsciously told myself that I don't have it within me to access that state I was looking for. And I repeated it, for decades. And so it was really a beautiful process to actually put all those beliefs on the table and see like what here is a false story I picked up a long time ago that doesn't serve me, what limits me, and what isn't even scientifically true. Because the ideas that, alcohol helps us sleep or relax are completely physiologically not grounded in any truths whatsoever, right? And so it was a fascinating process to really work through these different beliefs and mindset. And I got to a point where I just didn't desire alcohol anymore. I was so excited about who I was growing into being, this person who starts finding comfort within her skin, an emotional home that's safe within herself. A lot of women that I work with will tell me that they drink to really numb out from, the busy day and the work day. And it's like, it's this escape that they have. Well, imagine cultivating such a safe, loving, and nurturing emotional home within yourself instead of looking outside of you. That's like the ultimate reparenting and self-love and self-care,
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and like you say, I mean, it's the compound effect of, in no scenario is a couple glasses of wine self-care. Like it's just throwing you back further than it's helping you. And when you're speaking to the social aspect, I mean, I think that's a pretty common, I'm an introvert as well. I mean, I credit my relationship with alcohol to a lot of feeling comfortable in many social situations. And also I often enter this shame spiral of things that I'd done that were not socially appropriate, or not remembering really meaningful, deep conversations with loved ones. So it's like very counterintuitive. And like you say, it's the story that most people don't sit back and analyze. Like, is it even true? Having said that, for me, it was really important, the work of Gabor Mate, who works with heroin addicts, actually, but he talks about his own addiction to work. And essentially that, making it something you hate about yourself it doesn't make it possible for you to really move on. And for me, I credit alcohol. I feel like it helped me find a sense of myself within the whole dynamic, which now looking back, of course, I can sort of critique a little bit, but at the time, I found it empowering is what I'm trying to say. And I learned from that in that moment. And that's one of the things that I've sort of thanked alcohol for before I sent it on its way. Right. Yeah. Is there something that you miss about it, if you're being honest?
Yeah. I thought about this a few months after I started my first break, and what I really found that just completely shocked my worldview at that time was this idea that alcohol made me more fun, or just made things more enjoyable, or heightened my sense of really experiencing a moment. And when I was alcohol free, like I said, the alcohol affects our brain chemistry in such incredible ways that, your brain gets to rebalance when you remove it from the equation. And so I found myself actually alive to certain experiences and more euphoric and more joyful. And when I had those experiences juxtaposed with the drinking ones, to me, there was just no comparison. This was living life with your full senses and being really in the moment, and not having that shame spiral or any negative baggage attached to it. Right. But so it was a complete, to me, wow, I can't even believe I can have this much fun or just be this happy without it, because I never thought that was possible. But if we're thinking of one little thing that actually I noticed was I wasn't as hungry to overeat. So I used to drink and just snack on pretzels and something. And I was like, wow, if I'm not drinking, I can't actually overeat. My stomach is telling me I'm full. So it was probably it's a blessing in disguise. But I remember that was one thing that I kind of picked up on, that I can't numb even more with overeating. And, obviously I was 21 and there was clubs that I went to and parties and men that I met and all this different stuff that happened as a result of drinking, and of course I can't vilify that. I had a great time in college and growing up and stuff like that. But it's, it's the beautiful thing that saying in yoga, we learn to let go of things that no longer serve us. It doesn't mean they didn't serve us then. It doesn't mean that we were wrong for choosing them then, but we outgrow the younger versions of ourselves, and we choose things because we're evolved and we have different needs that are more nuanced now. I think when it comes to drinking, we all have very, very common human needs. And oftentimes we try to meet those needs through alcohol. And there's nothing wrong in having those needs. That's a very human, experience. It's more of becoming so reflective of, if I have a need for adventure, if I want to feel uncertain and have some risk, and really, a Friday night, sometimes you have no idea what's going to happen. You're drinking. If I want to feel that uninhibited, how can I actually create that experience in my life without that negative consequence that alcohol brings? Maybe I go jump into a cold body of water. Maybe I do a naked moon ritual. Maybe I just go out on a Tuesday, leave work at noon and go, shopping or something. It doesn't have to be that wild, but we are responsible for creating the feelings we want to feel. right? Whether it's a sense of adventure or fun or risk or anything like that, or glamour, right? How often is drinking tied with this foodie experience and this nice wine and the champagne? Well, having a need to feel glamorous and status and significance, that's a normal human need. So what other ways could you meet that, you know? And so it's kind of allows you to be a lot more creative too.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think, I don't know, there's so many. So what, I was just thinking when you were talking that my new thing is rock climbing. I'm still not even convinced how much I like it, but what I do like about it is it's incredibly challenging. It's like a mindset game for you, or for me. But yeah, and reflecting back, I was always a risk taker, but I feel like there's so many things that I'll speak of my own experience. Aspects of my personality that I chalked up to alcohol, which really were not the case. You know, like I'm still all those things, and I have a much healthier way of expressing them now. And let's go back to how you said, you know, about, and you never, like, I feel like it's a positive domino effect as well. I've had the same experience where, I mean, I would have never guessed that I would be an entrepreneur either. That was not in my vocabulary as things that were on my list to do. Not necessarily because I didn't think it was possible, but probably like I just didn't put myself in that category. I'm curious, like, what other things for you have been a positive domino effect other than, you know, and the amazing impact you're having on other women?
Yeah. I mean, like, my life has done a completely 180. I used to be a very jealous person, and I would use a lot of judgment and criticism to really justify why I wasn't going after the things I wanted when I saw people who were. And so the difference really is a fundamental shift in my beliefs from thinking that life was happening to me, that I am the manager of my circumstances, that you get what you can and you just have to get by, you know, all those kinds of thoughts, to really recognizing that I am an active creator of my life, and anything I want or desire is given to me by my intuition or higher self to go after. And I have it within me in my wheelhouse to be able to go after those things. So, you know, the confidence I got from not drinking really pushed me to then go for those things I also didn't believe were possible. And I remember even just like launching my business's website was such an incredible feeling, you know, like now looking back, a lot of people have websites, you know, whatever. But for me, it was just like, who am I, right? Am I the type of person with a website? And the same thing with my podcast. And I also ran a half marathon in my first year. I had no like ever even illusions about wanting to be a long distance runner. It just wasn't even something I thought I would want. And yet I smashed that kind of self-limiting belief for myself too. You know, and now I have a book that's coming out this next January called Euphoric, and being an author and a writer and really like building this message and this movement. I mean, I have to sometimes pinch myself that this is all happening, because this has been my dream since I was a little girl. And it was all like adulthood and drinking really put my dreams on the back burner. And it was like, you know, you're just supposed to, you know, get a nice job and pay the bills. You're not supposed to become a writer or a, you know, really make a big impact. That's just like your little kid self. Like, don't be silly. And drinking just kind of married into that status quo and allowed me to numb some of those dreams in the first place. So I think to answer your question, like the thing that's basically changed is this fundamental belief that literally anything's possible for my life. And I am inspired every day by my clients who manifest that as well. Like, I have so many clients that will leave behind their corporate jobs and launch businesses, or who have moved across, you know, the nation or the world, or who are writing books themselves, or getting back into like incredible hobbies like painting or hiking, or, you know, starting their own websites and their own communities. It just fills me with so much joy. I really don't think it's about a beverage at the end of the day. Who cares? I don't care what you drink at the end of the day. I care that you're alive to your life and your biggest dreams and passions. And I think in my experience, I haven't seen this level of transformation in any other kind of change or lifestyle change as it happens when you remove alcohol from the equation, if even just for the break, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think like a common thing, I mean, I sometimes work with clients that end up removing it from the equation, but that's not necessarily usually where they come to me in the beginning. And they're always surprised with how much time they have, like how much time I wasted in my first 30 years or 38 years of life sitting around drinking, basically. I mean, quote unquote, socializing, but I mean now, or even, I don't know, here in Mexico, it's a different situation in that it's common that you go to comida, which is like a lunch. And back when my husband and I both drank, it would be not abnormal that we go for lunch at 2:00 in the afternoon, and it's like all night party, basically. So calculate the amount of hours. And that's, I feel like, one of the biggest reasons that you can now manage so many other things you never even dreamed of, because you just have so much more productive time in the day. And not to mention, you feel better throughout the day and you sleep better and all of that. So how do you usually work with people? Is it always one-on-one, or how can people work with you?
Yeah, so I work one-on-one in like a kind of a VIP coaching package. And I also have a course for anyone who wants to do more on their own, self-paced. So that's an 8-week course. It's called Become Euphoric. And it really just lays down not just how to remove these limiting beliefs around alcohol, how to navigate socializing, but then also to start up this bucket list of passions and pursuits that you've been wanting to try. Because you're right, the time expands, and it's physical time in the sense that like you're literally getting back that hour, but it's also mental time, because when it comes to drinking, yes, there's a time that you're buzzed or you're drunk, but there's also the next morning that you're in the shame spiral. And there's also the rumination, the should I, shouldn't I, should I go to the store, should I not? There's the recrimination. There's so much chatter that goes on in the brain, when we're talking about a complicated relationship with alcohol. And imagine just being free of that chatter, free of that voice, free of that petty argument or justification or whatever it is. You're just completely free of that. And your mind has the space to really cultivate its genius and to find activities that bring it flow and purpose and passion and meaning. And that's the beautiful part to me. That's why I do what I do. It's so fulfilling to see really someone discovering not only things that they love, because those things that they love, whether it's a hobby like drawing or painting, is slowly inching them into finding what will bring them the most meaning and purpose. You have to just take one baby step after the next. Even who knows where this rock climbing kind of will take you, if not just training you how to do really hard things and believe in your strength and have that mindset carry on into your business and your coaching practice, right? Like we fall into different passions for all these beautiful reasons that the universe gives us to empower us further into our bigger mission, into this lifetime. And sometimes like it's hard at the beginning to ask yourself that question, like, what do I really want to do here on this planet? What's going to give me meaning and a sense of contribution and growth? And I had no idea. I was so stuck. I knew the shape of it, but I had no idea what would go in it. And it wasn't really until I allowed myself to take the break, start hearing my intuition a lot louder, a lot clearer, and start really following these little baby steps that the universe was giving me, that I really found it. And, today I'm so grateful. Sometimes I still cried tears of gratitude that I'm able to, do this work, and not only for myself and my own life, but really being able to touch the other lives of the women I work with.
Amazing. One last question before we go. I'm curious because I feel like for me, it was an issue. And I think a lot of women are really concerned with how it's going to affect their social life, because I don't know, they think they're going to lose friends, or they don't know how they're going to. Can you speak to that part of your transition and how you inform your clients on that?
Yeah. This is one of those beautiful nuanced topics, right? Because it's almost as if every person and personality is dealing with a higher self and a lower self. And sometimes you might struggle with your friends with their lower self, because when you're changing, you are threatening the status quo. You're threatening and putting up a mirror up to anyone else's behavior who's not changing with you. That ultimately brings with it fear of losing you, fear of you outgrowing them, feeling just like you don't want to, nobody wants to drink alone. So that, that brings that up. And so it might bring up some shakiness in certain relationships, right? But at the same time, like, we have to all realize nobody wakes up the next day after drinking thinking, I feel like $1,000,000. I'm going to go after my dream life. I feel so amazing. Everybody hates how they feel after drinking. Everybody, right? Some people are not very consciously aware of it, but they do. And so what you're doing by not drinking at a social event and with your friends out is you're giving permission and articulating the very sentiment that a lot of other people are feeling. And you, by giving permission, I mean, most of the time we're just bound by the social code that we have to drink when we're out socializing. And just being able to see someone else not do it, if I would have seen that 5 years ago, it would have rocked my worldview. I'd been like, why is she so confident? She's just being herself. She doesn't have to drink. Wait, what? It literally would have had me asking the right kind of questions, not judging them. And so even when people are asking questions, you can start to think like, maybe they're curious about doing this on their own. Maybe this is so much bigger than me and has nothing to do with me or the story I think someone's making up about me in their head. I'm really giving permission to a different lifestyle. And obviously that could come with some navigating with, your loved ones and close ones at first, and especially with partners or close ones to you. But the people who you love and who love you the most in the world, they don't love you because you have like a chemical flowing through your veins. They love the real you, the authentic you. And when you remove this numbing agent, it allows you to be more present with them. It allows you to ask questions. It allows you to be genuinely interested in their lives. And I think as we really start growing ourselves in that way, it gives us not only permission to not drink, but it also gives us permission to just be who we are, expressive in that, emboldened in that, not trying to follow some kind of society's role or some kind of box we have to be put in, or some kind of, code or behavior or normative kind of cultural behavior we all have. We can finally just like really swing to the tune of our own drum. And that is impressive to watch. It's inspiring to watch. And as you shine a bright light, because not only are you not, following the herd of this, you're also feeling amazing, looking amazing, radiant, your physical energy goes up. It will really pique other people's interests, I think. So go with grace, and just understand that maybe I'm a leader in this. Maybe this isn't, something to be ashamed of or embarrassed about. Maybe some of my friends will be interested, maybe not. Maybe we'll both realize that we just like each other no matter what the other person's drinking. I mean, think about it. Does it really matter that someone has a type of beverage in their glass and you have a different one at the end of the day, if we're really talking about human connection here? So those are just some tips that I like to use, and explain to some of my clients for mindset tips. But I found myself, with grace, with the learning curve, that my friends and I deepened our relationships. Same thing with my husband. And for anyone who really doesn't appreciate the real you, maybe they're not as worth spending so much time with. And maybe you guys were both keeping each other stuck and safe in this limiting behavior, but it's time to outgrow them. And I'm sure that will rarely happen. It's probably, for the most part, your loved ones will love you for who you really are.
Yeah, well, everything you just said was my experience. So I think it's a common concern, but most of it is in your head.
Yeah.
So are you optimistic like I am? I feel like younger generations of women are already a lot more conscious than I ever was at that age. Are you getting that sense as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, not only is so much more being said around alcohol, but it's also being said about so many other things like body image issues and diet culture. And just like, I think we're starting to talk about taboo topics so much more in our society, and being relevant and really being reflective about our different issues, and being authentic and vulnerable is starting to be more accepted, than it was in previous generations. So I think there's a study that Gen Z, the youngest one, is like the most teetotaler of them all. Like they really don't like to drink as much. And I mean, kudos to them. It's a safer society. And how many of us were initiated into drinking when we're teenagers to fit in or rebel or prove that we're adults or something? It's interesting that you look back and really see how conditioned we were to do it then, and how somehow most of us don't even reevaluate the role of alcohol in our lives ever again. And it deserves to be reevaluated, because we are wiser and we evolve, and maybe the needs of our 17-year-old self are not the same as our 35-year-old self, you know? But yeah, I think alcohol will also slowly lose its popularity in the sense of so many different alternatives are taking its place. I mean, as we evolve in technology and in health, why would we continue drinking this toxic beverage just to socialize? Like, they're going to make new beverages, right? There'll be new mood enhancing drinks, and it's just going to kind of go the way of cigarettes, I think. Whereas, yeah, maybe it won't go away completely, but it's really not the norm anymore. Or it's super accepted to not drink instead of now it's seen as some kind of issue with you and not the actual beverage.
Yeah, I know. I'm always so excited when I'm going, anywhere in the world. Increasingly, in a really nice restaurant, you have a mocktail menu, and it definitely makes me feel a little bit more welcome at home. But at the same time, pretty much any bartender in the world can make you an amazing, fun drink that doesn't have alcohol in it.
Yeah,
you can feel like you're having something special with an umbrella in it, and it's not going to make you feel like you don't want to get up the next day.
Absolutely. It's like you can have your cake and eat it too with no negative baggage or side effects.
Definitely. Any last remarks you want to leave us with before we sign off?
Yeah, well, if anyone's interested in like exploring a break from alcohol themselves and just starting to do the mindset and beliefs, I do have a free course that I'd love to offer your listeners. It's called the 5-Day Restart. And so I'll share the link with you afterwards. But if you're questioning this, like, I remember how much it brought me pain because I thought I wasn't normal or I wasn't fitting in, or it was just something to be kind of embarrassing. And I couldn't believe how much I learned about myself, what I really need, how to take care of myself truly, and what I really want in this life. We have one lifetime. Maybe if you believe in reincarnation, there'll be more, but let's just assuming we have the one. Like, what do we want our legacies to be? How do we want to find organic joy here on this planet? Not artificial joy because a chemical hijacked your brain. What really makes you happy? And just starting to ask yourself these kind of questions can be such a beautiful journey of personal growth. And that's what I think it is. I think reevaluating your relationship with alcohol ultimately is for the wisest, most mature, most brave, and most intuitive people who know they want more, and they're not embarrassed or so unaware to not be able to ask themselves hard questions.
Incredible. Love that. Well, we'll leave it at that, and we'll share the link to that course in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. Where's the best place to find you? Where do you hang out most? On Instagram?
Yeah, so my Instagram is euphoric.af, and then my website is euphoricaf.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Karolina. I feel like we're soul sisters in many senses, so it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's a super pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to Energetically You. I hope that this episode has helped you to tune into your natural energy sources so that you feel more energized and focused throughout your day. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to help more ambitious women just like you accomplish their goals. Don't forget to take a screenshot, share it on social, or in your Instagram stories, and tag me at Megan Swan Wellness. See you soon.